hit the record button and share with you what I'm hoping is a guide for our talk for the next little bit here. So when we think about teaching and learning with AI, I imagine that you've already got a lot of thoughts about it. And so I also want to just make room for the possibility that this is really going to be more of a generative discussion, which I'm all about. I'm totally happy with. If you have a lot of questions and want to learn more, I also do have resources that I'll be sharing with you later during the session, okay? I always try to utilize AI to enhance the work that I'm doing. So this slide is an example of that. The image that I got here was provided to me through Copilot, which is an assistant within the Microsoft Word. And so I went and found where Copilot pulled it, and so I gave the citation for that. We'll go ahead and move into the first thing, and I'm curious for you all to kind of jump in, chime in here again, either in the chat or taking yourself off of mute, what we have learned about generative AI in the last 2 years, okay? We know that generative AI has a lot of potential, a lot of promise, right? It can make us more efficient at things. It can make it appear that we're getting a lot more done because it can be an effective assistant to us. It can also get us started with some creative ideas. Sometimes I am struggling to come up with a theme or an idea, and I just need that list. So for example, the Soup Up Your Semester, I use ChatGPT to get me started on a list of themes, but actually that theme idea didn't come from Chat, it came from me, but it wasn't until I read like 5 other ideas that I got to that one, right? So we can use it to be more creative that way. One of the things that we're really seeing a lot more promise around is how it can be used to support individual learners through specific platforms like Khanmigo, through the Khan Academy, or even through some really ingenuitive prompting. We can get a chat bot to interact with us in a way that's going to support us on a tutoring level or as an individual support level. But then that last bullet point I want to also mention, right? And this is a big concern for a lot of instructors, is that they feel like that generative AI is limiting learning because it's actually giving shortcuts to what students would otherwise have to do themselves. So I'm going to take a pause for a second. Anybody want to chime in on any of these?
Hello.
I'll say something for just a second. Sorry,
Please
Sarah.
do. Hey, Misty.
Hey. So one of the things that I have noticed is that I feel like a lot of papers here lately, like the wording, the vocabulary, and like for example, like I had a student that didn't speak very good English, and she was able to use her prompts to come up with, this paper, but then she didn't cite anything. And so I feel like, because it's AI and because they're coming up with the prompts, like they feel like the content that comes out is automatically theirs and they're not really sure what to do with it. So I don't know. I feel like we could do a better job as a whole, maybe like just teaching our students about what they're getting out of the AI chatbot.
I'm really glad you said that. And we are definitely going to talk about the importance of doing exactly that. That's a huge recommendation that comes not just from the literature, but definitely from teaching and learning. Yeah. Kaz, did you want to share anything?
Yeah, I've been using, I teach graphic design and basic animation, and I noticed that some of the students had turned in graphic assignments that were actually AI, because you can see for some reason the AI can't handle fingers, so there's like
Right.
10 fingers on one hand,
Yeah.
type of situation. And I do have lessons that do show them how to use that and to use their creativity and make sure they nurture their own creativity, so AI doesn't think for ourselves and we become dumb.
Right.
But I do notice that some students in the early assignments before I usually have the AI at the very end of the assignment so they can get all the good stuff first. But they basically would turn in something, and I can tell that it is AI. There's a certain style to it.
Yeah.
And so I have to let them know, I'm glad you used AI, but we're not using that now. I want to make sure that you're creating it and that it's coming from you. I love collaborating with AI, but it could be a little scary if you just rely on it constantly.
Yeah. Really good points. Thank you both. So
Sarah?
let's acknowledge that, generative AI is not going to replace us. I know there's some fear about that. I think that it's going to support us ultimately as teachers, but it can't replace us because it doesn't understand the nuance of the information, the content like we do. It also doesn't understand the nuance of the kinds of interactions engaging, all the ways that we assess knowledge and then respond and then engage and challenge our students, right? So there are lots of things it can do well, but it's really, again, it's just following scripts. And it's predicting based on past language models. So it's never going to be able to completely replace us. And certainly isn't going to ever be able to ensure 100% accuracy. And we're seeing that, like Michael just noted with the multiple finger, like extra fingers, extra digits, right? In my experiences using generative AI, I have found it to be less effective for me unless I get really involved in the prompting, right? So I have to be incredibly detailed and give a lot of context if I want the right kind of product on the other end. So it's not going to work well without significant human interaction. And then another thing we have to keep in mind is that there are privacy and confidentiality concerns. If you're working behind a paywall, there are some assurances provided through some of those companies. I'm not sure that I trust that all of those are verified. So I've been very hesitant to share information. Some of that may be more just who I am, but yeah, I don't expect the information I put into any of those programs right now to be kept private or confidential. So, in terms of where we're going, which is really what I wanted to talk to you all about today, first of all, I did utilize chat throughout this presentation to get resources, to get information. And one of the things I like to do is I ask for resources and then I go and I verify that those resources are accurate. So I'm just going to throw some quotations up here for you to take a look at. I'll give you a moment to read one or two of them. So I think that the essence of these three statements, of course, selected by me for a purpose, but these three statements, I think, really encapsulate the general attitude right now by a lot of people, including leaders in the industry, which that thought is, it's incredible as long as, right? It's great if, right? It's going to be an incredible tool for us, but, right? So there's this extra, these strings that are attached to the promise. And so again, that's why it's so important that we have these conversations in higher education, because believe it or not, I know we don't always feel like this, but believe it or not, higher education is what the world looks to innovate, to develop, to progress the human condition. And if this set of tools is going to do for us what it's promising to do, we have to be involved in this work. And so it takes thought leaders within higher ed to further the conversations and to be involved in them. Okay. So one thing that is clear at this point is that as higher education instructors, we have an opportunity and I believe a responsibility to support what we're going to call AI literacy. It includes some of the things that Michael Kazraz was just talking about. Talking about AI and the ways that it can be used, as well as the limitations, is part of that, right? We can be using it in our teaching and then modeling how we're using it responsibly, right? We can require our students to try to use it in very specific ways based on course outcomes and learner needs. What we also need to be doing is getting students to reflect on their use of it. And I think that's the big miss right now. Because a lot of instructors aren't talking about it, students are using it anyway, but they're not being prompted to reflect on how effective it is. So the learning that needs to happen is actually, that's a missed opportunity right now. Them reflecting on their process, them reflecting on the quality of results, because at the end of the day, our students are going to graduate and their employers are going to expect them to use the tools that are available to be more efficient, right? And so if generative AI is an expectation in their workplace, which it is in many of them already, we have an obligation to allow students to explore how they're going to collaborate with it, as Michael talked about. Okay. We need to be learning about the ways that generative AI is being used in the workplace and share that information with our students and encourage students to use it as a tool for learning, not as a replacement for learning, right? You learn alongside of it, you learn with it, or you use it to verify what you know or to, as an extra resource. I'm curious to know if any of you have thoughts that you want to share as you look at these bullet points. I like what Eric's put in the chat. Thanks, Eric.
Sarah,
Yes.
so one of my roles here at the college is supporting students given academic support through the Student Success Center. And we used to have some paid tools that we would direct students to, Snap and Read and Co-Writer, that would help students who maybe due to an ESL or a low literacy level, students who were having trouble understanding the reading material of a college class. And we no longer have those tools because I think AI is providing some of that for free. So asking it to summarize or to give advice about the tone of a piece of writing,
Yeah.
or just using the free tools. I don't even think of them as AI, but just like voice typing and kind of
Right.
letting our students know about some of the I guess assistive technology
Right.
use. I think is a good thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to mention, kind of just moving in that direction, what Michelle was talking about. As teachers, we can be using it too, right? We can be using it to refine the ways that we communicate with our students, making sure our tone is correct or our language is appropriate. Sometimes we've all had that student email that we just like, we know we need to hit send, but we also are a little bit worried that we haven't calmed down enough before we hit send. Generative AI, like chat, is really good at helping with that. Can help make things more clear or can rewrite something in another way if we know that sometimes students don't understand our directions. There are tools available now that can create instructional materials. In a Snap, you can get a PowerPoint, you can get a quiz, and we're actually going to have a new tool integrated directly into my courses coming soon called Teachermatic. I want you to be on the lookout for it along with some training. We didn't select this tool. It's provided to us through our LMS. I've used it a little bit as a administrator. We got early access. And it made a PowerPoint for me in 30 seconds or less than that, right? That it would have taken me 20 minutes to make. Now, the quality of the PowerPoint, I'll tell you, it's like a C minus. But for some people, this is going to be the first step in getting something completed, right? So it gets the slides done and then maybe you revise the text, or it picks out the images and then maybe you know. So there's ways that we can be using it. Again, as the experts, we get to decide how we use it. That last bullet point there on tutoring resource, I think that's kind of what Michelle was talking about. There are so many different ways that these platforms can be used to support students. Some of them very specific, purchasable platforms. Some of them are free and they just require some thoughtful prompting, maybe supported by the instructor. I want to point out here at the bottom, this kind of like this on this little island down here. I am uncomfortable putting student work into generative AI and asking that that tool to provide feedback to a student unless I've received that student's permission. Because again, of confidentiality and privacy, I want to respect the intellectual property of a student. So I'm not going to be feeding content directly into ChatGPT, for example, unless the student has given me permission. What I'll be doing instead is prompting students to use it as a resource for feedback, right? I also find it to be unethical to ask a tool like generative AI to do the grading for me on work that teachers would normally have to manually grade. Now, that being said, there are folks who are already doing these things. And I'm not the police. I'm not going to be the one to decide what's against the law. There's no guidance from the college saying you can't do that. But that to me, that's our intellectual gift, is that as subject matter experts, we're the ones doing the grading. And so I'm not going to be doing it. I'm not going to be using generative AI to grade student work. I do invite you to make that decision for yourself and to think about what you bring to teaching, what skill set, what knowledge you bring to teaching, and how your expertise is important in the grading of your student work. Kind of moving into this last point about integrity, this is really, again, where we have an obligation to students to be modeling its use and to be talking about academic integrity early and often. Pretending that AI doesn't exist is not working. So In your syllabus right now, you're required to have a use statement of how students can use it. If you continue to prohibit the use of it completely, that's yours and your department's choice. And you need to be talking about that regularly and reminding students of that and talking about why we're not going to be using it, why the skills that students are developing need to be developed in isolation of generative AI or without the use of generative AI. Revise your assignment so that there's less incentive to use these tools as well. That's another key piece here. If a student can put the prompt into these tools and have it spit back in a paper, that's a good sign that maybe that paper needs to be reworked or that assignment needs to be reworked so students are asked to do something that only they can do, right? And we can help with that in teaching and learning. If you are going to be encouraging students to develop their AI literacy and use generative AI, then give them their opportunity to share how they're using it, at what level they're using it, and again, to reflect on how effective it's been. Always address your concerns with students first. So if you've got a student who you suspect has been using a tool that you have not approved, directly address it with the student. A student getting a 0 without having a conversation with an instructor first is very hard to support up the chain, right? So the first thing that your chair or your supervising instructor is going to say is, well, did you talk to the student about it? Your academic honesty policy and the generative AI policy in the syllabus establish your expectations and let students know what to anticipate. And you have that responsibility to be the person to reinforce that with a conversation. And then I'm going to pretend like that last bullet point's not there because Laura Simmons just told us that that's not where we put it. There's an academic integrity form. So please make sure that you're not using Watermark to document it. I got my wires crossed on that last bullet point. I do have some resources that I wanted to throw out there for you all to look at. These are some, and again, you're going to get a copy of this presentation. I belong to a couple different Facebook groups that have been very, very helpful to me, keep me thinking about it all the time. They post like 20 posts a day, so I can't keep up. Leon Furs is a very thoughtful instructor and graduate student. I'm currently reading the book at the top here, Teaching with AI. I've really enjoyed that text. And Ethan Malik is a leading scholar in this area. He teaches at Wharton School of Business, and he has a couple different videos on YouTube, a series that he and his wife co-lead. So these are some of my top picks. I really think that talking and sharing ideas and staying connected with each other is a great way to continue to grow and understand how you can be using it as an instructor. And I want you to be looking for PD opportunities that Blue Ridge and other organizations that we're connected with are going to have this fall. So you can either watch the recordings or join us live. I'm really sorry that we don't have more time for discussion. I want to get us back to the main group so that we can go over the other resources that we have to share with y'all tonight. But please continue to be thinking about this and chat me up or let me know if you want to have a conversation. Okay, I'm going to stop